AITA for refusing to let my husband move his father into our home. My husband's 40M mom passed away late last year. It was very hard on him and his father. The holidays were rough. My husband is still struggling, and I've been doing my best to be kind, supportive, and understanding. But he's been less attentive with our 3 kids, 14F, 12M, and 9M. And I'm pretty sure he's struggling at work too, but he won't admit it. He started therapy about a month ago and is going once a week. A couple weeks ago he brought up to me that he wants to move his dad, 75M, into our house. He said that his dad is struggling too, and that being in the house he shared with his wife the past 50 years isn't doing him any good. He had an entire plan laid out, so it was obvious to me that he's been planning this for a while, without talking to me about it. He wants to move his dad into the room that we had just moved our middle child into last summer. Before that, our 2 youngest were sharing a room, so we did some renovations to make an extra bedroom so all our kids could have their own space. He wants to force our 2 youngest to share a room again so his dad can move in. He also wants to talk to his dad about putting their house on the market or possibly renting it out, which means Phil would be here long term. After he laid out his plan, he asked me what I thought, and I told him my immediate reaction is, no. I told him that barely any time has passed since his mom's death, and it's too soon to make such drastic changes in everyone's lives. I told him his dad will get better with time, and we all just need to take a step back and not rush into any decisions. He was not happy with my response and kept asking for specific reasons other than, not enough time has passed. I suggested that we look into different housing options for his dad if he's uncomfortable in his home, which I get. His dad has enough money saved to afford a good retirement home or smaller condo, which would allow everyone to still have their own space. He didn't like that idea either because it would mean his dad is still living alone. I'll admit, there are reasons I didn't tell him. Seeing my husband deal with his grief has been hard, especially since it's affecting his ability to be present with me and the kids. I really don't want a second grieving man in our house. I also really don't want to kick our middle child out of the room that we just made specifically for them. That isn't fair to them. But I know if I tell my husband this, he's going to think I'm being selfish. And maybe I am. Phil currently lives about 3 hours away, so visiting him is difficult. We also live in a pretty rural area, and the nearest town with respectable retirement homes is over an hour away. So even that option isn't ideally close. But it's still closer. I know it sounds selfish, but I just don't think I could handle 2 grieving men in my home. I can barely handle 1 right now. NTA. It's not selfish to want your soon-to-be son to have his own room. Find an apartment near your home. Move dad there. Have him over to visit a few times a week. There are plenty of ways to solve this that don't involve packing your house full of people and upending your family life. NTA. The first thing that strikes me is that it wouldn't be fair to your children, who just go their own rooms. Sure, lots of kids share and even have tinier spaces to deal with. But in this case, you just presented them with their own rooms and they went through a process to get there. So taking them away creates sadness, confusion, and probably some animosity. That animosity is a particularly bad thing when you have 2 grieving people in the home who will be the focus of that animosity. Second, your husband is barely meeting his duties now, not judging, and wants to add another person to the mix. And all signs point to his father also being your responsibility. Even if the guy is nice and plucky for 75, who is going to move the stuff? Who is going to help him get situated? Who is going to grocery shop for him? Feed him? Do all the stuff of getting him to your house, settled, and getting rid of his stuff, other house? It's gonna be you. This man is added work at a time when you have too much already. And finally, yes, the multiple grieving men is a valid reason. You need to be more honest with your husband. I know you are struggling with losing your mom, but that struggle has been passed on to me in various ways. You are checked out. I am alone doing X, Y, Z. Now you come to me with a very big thing and I don't think I can handle it. I can't handle caring for another person. And given how you have been, it will be on me. I think it will impact the children negatively as they just got their own rooms. And I can't handle more negativity in this home. NTA. The house belongs to you too. And it is the boy's home. It's definitely not fair to the kids to give away their space and make them share a bathroom with an old man, even if he is their grandfather, without their input. My Phil died 2.5 years ago, and my Mill has spent about 56 months of that time visiting us in our house. She sold the house she bought in 2021 and is with us again temporarily. It's not easy, and has nothing to do with grief, and we are empty nesters with a spare bedroom. Mill has an offer on a house about 30 minutes away, and should be moving out next month. We plan and hope to visit her at least a couple times a week. But that's not 24/7. I would highly recommend your Phil sell his house and get a small home or condo near to you. I cannot believe anyone is saying YTA to not wanting your Phil to move in permanently. We don't even know he would want that. Living with someone, never mind pushing your kids back into sharing a room indefinitely, is a big deal. Hard NTA. I think you all having a discussion about him selling up and buying a smaller place nearby is a way better option. You said you live in a rural area, so chances are you have a little bit of space in your backyard. Sell your father-in-law's house and buy a pre-made container home, Granny Pod. https www.countryLiving.com/homedesign/A37788/grannypods/. That way he is close but not under the same roof. You don't have to move your son out of his room, and your father-in-law has his own space. Info. How does your father-in-law feel about this? Has he mentioned feeling lonely and wanting to move closer? Or is this just your husband coming up with an idea because he's worried about his father? NTA. Don't let these comments guilt you for valid feelings. It's hard to live with a grieving person. I lost my dad in 2022 and I have been insufferable for my family to be around. I know this, so I can see how your husband's grief is affecting your family. I agree that moving Phil in your home may make this issue persist. I read another comment that mentioned getting him an apartment near your family. That sounds like a reasonable compromise. Nah. We lost my mom at the beginning of last year. You are absolutely correct that it is way too soon for anyone to be making any kind of big decisions right now. Your family is grieving and that is going to cloud judgment. My fog is only just starting to lift now, and honestly it comes back at a moment's notice. There's a good chance your husband feels he needs to have his dad closer for his own needs. He may also feel guilty about your dad being alone in the house. My dad is only 30 minutes away, and when I think of him alone I start to sob. Your Phil may even regret if he lets his son move him in and sells the house. People kept trying to talk my dad into giving up his house for the exact reasons your husband is laying out. And a year later, my dad is finally starting to make it his own while still keeping my mom's memory alive. He knows he 100% would have regretted it if he listened to them. If your husband only just started therapy, it may be worth him discussing this with the therapist, or even seeing if there's a way for the two of you to see someone else together. Your concerns are valid and you both need to be able to talk through them without that cloud getting in the way. Nah, your husband wanting to help his dad through their shared grief is understandable. Given his dad is 3 hours away, his solution is to bring him closer to family. I can see where he is coming from. You also have valid concerns. Namely, displacing your middle child. Neither of you are currently an but it seems to me that you two need to come together and communicate. Find a solution that works for everyone. Perhaps Phil can move to a smaller house or apartment in the town you live so that he can be closer. But not in your space. Maybe he can sell his home and you can use the money to complete another renovation to add more room to your house. His dad has lived in that house 50 years and undoubtedly has friends around him. He also probably has good memories of being there with his late wife. Sounds to me like the son wants to ease his grief by bringing his father into his orbit. I'm a widow in my late 60s and I'd have a very hard time living with young grandkids again. And there's no way I'd give up my independence unless I was physically unable to take care of myself. Nah, it's clear that everyone is struggling in this situation, which is to be expected. Are you getting therapy to help your husband and maybe also your kids deal with grief? Are you taking on more of the work with the kids and need support? I think it's understandable and commendable that your husband wants to help his dad. And also understandable that you realize that you're going to be taking on more labor. Emotional and otherwise. Keep talking. Keep compromising. Sorry for y'all's loss. Nah, as someone with what essentially amounts to 8 parents between myself and my husband, at least 3 of which I know we are expected to care for in their old age, including intentions by at least 2 to move in with us, not that they've ever actually asked us if we're okay with that. I can understand your hesitation. By letting him move in now, you're committing to potentially 20 years of another person living in your house, with increasing care needs that will fall solely on you and your husband. That means your children go back to sharing until they move out. And once they do, you and your husband still have someone to care for. I can also understand being overwhelmed by your current situation and not wanting to add additional stress to your plate. However, your husband is probably stressed out about his father being so far away. I would look at a senior independent living facility close to you, or possibly even a condo. That way your husband can be close, but you still maintain some independence for your immediate family. Nah, I think it would certainly be nice to move him in, and I don't think your husband is an for wanting him to move in, or for grieving. However, your reasoning makes sense, and I think it's more important to prioritize your children. And logically this just doesn't work. Your husband isn't thinking straight because of his grief. It would be different if you had a spare bedroom. You're probably also doing the majority of the family labor right now. And one more person, being a senior and all, is going to just be that much more weight on your shoulders, and you can't carry everyone around you like that. It's healthy to recognize your limits. And I hope that your husband can understand. Info. Should your Phil need assistance and extra care, who would be expected to take on the additional work? NTA. Not even close. The fact that DH came to you with a fully formed plan rather than talking you through it from the very beginning is a problem. Also, what's his plan for the extra labor and expenses his father creates? Who's doing Phil's laundry and cooking? What's the plan for when he needs additional care? Who is helping him with doctor appointments, personal care, errands, shopping? If DH pushes that onto you for the kids, he will full score do it for elder care. This is a hill you die on. Voice of experience here. It can crush you, crush your family, and it could last for years or even decades, swallowing your family and marriage whole. Upending your family life as a knee-jerk for DH to try to fix his grief and guilt is not okay. Individual therapy for him. Couples therapy for you both. And if he pushes this, rethink things. If he's expecting you to pick up this load, your health is on the line. NTA. I was in a similar situation. My ex wanted to move his dad in with us. I was 6 months pregnant and we were getting ready to move. I said no. One day, ex went to visit his dad and just brought him home and moved him in. I ended up having to provide care for him after a surgery. He only showered when told to. He smoked. And he stank. I should have been preparing for our baby, and instead I was caring for someone I didn't even like, much less want living with us. Your family, meaning you, husband, kids, comes first if you have the space and want him there. That's one thing. But you don't have the space. He could sell his home and move closer. NTA. How are you being selfish by prioritizing your child over a grown man? It's awful your mill has passed away. I am so sorry for your loss. Making both your children share a room after you just renovated so they didn't have to do that would create resentment in your home. Your husband is allowed to grieve, but when you have children you can't just peace out. I think your solution to having him move closer makes lots of sense. Everyone stays independent, but then your husband can visit your Phil much easier. When it was time to move my grandmother in, my parents added on to the house and my aunts helped pay. Is something like this an option? What's the plan when he moves in? What's he going to do with himself? You'll be removing him from his neighbors, friends, etc., and his social network. He could go from a healthy, spry 75-year-old to a couch potato. Wait a year before doing anything. They say to wait a while after a life-changing event before making big decisions. While I sympathize with your husband, from experience, you will be the one that will probably be his dad's primary caregiver. Taking him to APPTS, doing the laundry, etc. You don't say if he's still driving or not. But moving him to an unknown area will probably blow that right out of the water if he is. Hoping it works out. Definitely NTA. NTA. However, I understand your husband's intentions. And you should help him find a solution. There must be a compromise where your Phil moves closer. Your kid keeps his room. And you don't have two grieving men in your house. Talk to your husband openly. Tell him you understand he is grieving. But this is impacting you and your family also. Without an open talk, you won't find a solution.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.